Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who's watching. Welcome to the very first edition of Time Over Distance, brought to you by the Royal Ocean Racing Club. And for our first episode, we are talking to Brian Thompson.
Well, good evening, Louis, and thanks for Rourke for setting this up. And hello to all my fellow members and sailing friends around the world, all of us land bound, unfortunately, at the moment. But hopefully, this can entertain you for 1 hour of our lockdown.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And Brian doesn't really need an introduction, but he had to count them up for us. Brian has broken 33 world sailing records over the last 30 years, and they are some amazing racing. But the first thing I want to ask Brian is, how did you get into sailing? Where did you start off?
Well, I didn't start off on the ocean, on a little lake near Ruislip, which is west of London, near Heathrow Airport. Is a 30-acre lake called Ruislip Lido that is not even used for sailing anymore. And there was a very small club there, and we sailed herons, graduates, albacores, and they even had some international moths. But I was only a kid. First time I went there was when I was 3, because my mum and dad were into sailing at the time, and it was a sort of cool sport in the 70s, so kind of like kite surfing might be now. And we would sail in the winter on the lake, sometimes breaking the ice, and then in the summers, a caravan on the east coast of England on a river called the Crouch. And I used to race there with the Royal Corinthian Yacht Club, which has since become Rourke, or been amalgamated with Rourke in Cowes. And not only racing, but also just exploring up the river. And some of my best memories are just going off single-handed in the Heron dinghy, just me and our family dog, and we'd just go off for hours at 11, 12 years old. So maybe that gave me a taste of sailing on my own and exploring on the water.
Right. Wow, it's always interesting to know where people come from. But I know you did end up as a skipper in the Caribbean. How on a charter boat? Is that right? How?
Yes, purely by chance. A lot of these things happen by chance, but I did a degree in economics at university, and then I took a year off to go traveling around. I was going around Europe on a motorbike, and was in Gibraltar, and purely by chance, this Swan 48 boat turned up in the marina, and I was just chatting to the guy, and he said, "I'm a ski instructor in the winter, and in the summer I skipper this boat." And I said, I obviously had done sailing, but I had no idea there was any such thing as professional sailing, which would combine traveling, sailing, and having your expenses paid. So I thought, this is great. And he said, go to Palma, Mallorca, and walk along the docks and ask everyone for a job. And I went and took my motorbike to Valencia, ferry to Palma, spent 5 weeks kind of day working there and talking to all the boats, and eventually got a job on a quite a famous racing boat called Mistress Quickly. And then the next year, I sailed to the Caribbean, and at 22 was skippering sailing boats in the Caribbean. So I thought, this is great. I don't think I need to go back to real life yet.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, what I want to do is, we've got so much to get through. I know that sounds awful to say that, but I'm going to zoom right forward to 1999 and Steve Fossett's PlayStation. I'm just going to pull up a picture of the boat. We'll make it a bit bigger. I'll keep it over here. Yeah, you see Brian
I'll
getting
give you
out
a
of the
bit
way
more
of the
room.
boat there. You don't want to get run over, Brian.
Yeah, there you go.
So
It's a
Steve
spectacular
Foss,
boat.
yes. I'll just give you a quick intro. 32 metres originally, I believe, 105 feet, catamaran. Morelli, Melvin?
Yeah, exactly.
So just
and
tell
then
us,
stretch to 125 feet. So that is in its longer version with completely new bows. But that's the original mast, and it was way ahead of its time. So this was conceived by Steve Fossett, who was an amazing adventurer and record breaker in every field, from sailing to ballooning to dog sled racing, gliding, flying.
Yeah.
Really incredible.
Yeah.
And this boat had a lot of totally novel equipment, really. So it was a huge amount of effort to get up and running in time for the race, which started New Year's Eve, 1999.
Wow. Yeah, and I know you did something like over 100,000 miles on PlayStation, but one of the highlights got to be the 24-hour record for you.
Yeah, that was one of our first sales. It got built in Cookson's in New Zealand, and the record at that time had been for years 540 miles, and that was something Steve and all of us in the team really wanted to try to break. And we did that in the first 2 or 3 months of having the boat, and it was a one-way track, which was good. So we sailed from Auckland north. We didn't have to do any tacks or jibes, which was good, because every time we would tack or jibe, we'd break all our battens at that stage. That was one of the things that really held us back. It took a few months to get our batten program up to where it should have been for the new unexpected loads. But lots of things were being tried out for the first times, and it was a lot of work. No halyard locks, so everything was 2-to-1 or even 3-to-1 halyards. So it was but a fantastic boat to work on. A great team. A lot of great sailors were on board for the race.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at PlayStation now. This picture. Look how thin the rig is. I mean, there's no protection on that boat at all compared to what we see on modern offshore multi-hulls. What was it like on board?
Yeah, you were pretty exposed. You can see the two yellow parts in the hull. That was the pod at the front, and then there was the cockpit. But especially when you were driving, you were standing up and you were literally 2 meters from the ocean. So if you had a wave from the side, it was going to just push you right off. And the other thing you'll notice is the huge net or trampoline between the two pods. So if you had to transfer or walk across from one side to the other, the waves were actually breaking through the tramp sometimes, and it could tip you right over. You'd have to sometimes, to cross over, ask them to slow the boat down so you can get across safely.
Right. And I know that you obviously started the race, as it was called, but unfortunately, I believe you had some structural problems. Tell us what happened in the race, Brian.
Yeah, well, it was an incredible event conceived by Bruno Peyron, and there were 6 multi-hulls who started, and in fact 5 of them did finish. We were the only boat not to finish that race, which was quite incredible. Because when the race was leaving, it was quite emotional seeing the other boats leaving, because you thought, gosh, this is totally novel. I mean, which of these people are going to get back? And fortunately, they all got back. We had off Brazil an issue where we hit something in the water and broke our port daggerboard clean off. And then it didn't feel safe to go around the rest of the world with only one daggerboard. So at that point, we aborted, went up north to Florida on our good daggerboard, and then we carried on doing other records. But that was the end of the race. But it was an incredible event.
Right. And again, I'm going to fast forward slightly. You know, in these sort of the early years of your professional career, and we're going to jump to 2008, 2009. Obviously, there was a big build up to this, but can you tell me who this lot are?
Well, it's a great picture. Left to right, that is Sam Davies, Dee Caffari, Alex Thompson, me, Steve White, Mike Golding, and Johnny Malbon. So we were the 7 Musketeers in the 2008 Vendée Globe. So it was the biggest British entry that has ever been in that event.
Yeah, and I've done a bit of homework. Sam Davies, 4th after 95 days at sea, and she lit up the race, didn't she? She got so much publicity, and rightly so, for an amazing race. You know, for her and Roxy, I believe the name of her boat. But she wasn't alone. You were 5th, and Dee Caffari 6th, and Steve White, God bless him, he was 8th. It wasn't to be for Johnny Malbon, Mike Golding, and Alex Thompson. You know, they were all forced to retire, but it was a tough race. I mean, I think total of 19 retired out of 30 starters.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Only 11 boats finished, which, is quite a high rate of attrition. And there was perhaps 5 boats almost on the first day that pulled out, because there was a credible head sea, broke a lot of masts. And then down in the Southern Ocean, boats were just dropping like flies, with keels, rigs breaking. And that's probably why they came up with the one design keel and rig close after that race. But it was really fantastic to have so many British entries in that race. And I finished between Sam and Dee, so like a thorn between 2 roses.
And that was your first solo round the world race, wasn't it? Solo.
Yes, I'd done before that the Ostar on a trimaran, little trimaran, the Mini Transat, and then the Route de Rhum on a IMOCA. But yeah, that's my first solo round the world. I've done PlayStation and Maiden 2 on multi-hulls with crew, but I'd never sailed solo around the world. But I had a bit of experience of the race course by then, which came in handy. And it was a great program, led by Andrew Pindar. And the shame was we didn't really have the boat quite ready or tested enough before the start of the race. Yeah,
but you had a few showstoppers, didn't you? Do you want to just run us through some of the problems you had on board during that round the world?
Well, probably the biggest one was off South of Australia, where the had a crack right through some of the bulkheads down below. So the front of the boat was starting to separate from the rest of it. And so I had to stop for 2 days in the Southern Ocean and repair it, which was incredibly hard work for 2 days, just constantly cutting bits of the boat up, gluing them in, screwing them in, gluing them in, glassing it over, and then holding jet boils just to try to heat and try not to fall asleep while you're trying to heat the epoxy up. And then we had hydraulic issues where the keel rams were leaking, so all the oil was going in the bilge. I'd have to scoop it up, put it in the ram. Electronics went, and charging as well. So it's just down to the solar panels to charge a boat. But a lot of things went wrong. But all I thought about the whole way, especially once the things went wrong, was just to get to the finish. And then by the end, it was also just to try to stay ahead of Dee, who was fast approaching from behind.
Yeah, I mean, you were, as you say, a thorn between 2 roses, I think, as you put it. and Dee Caffari wasn't far behind you, was she?
Oh no, I think I finished early in the morning, and she was probably 2, 3 hours afterwards. It was really, really close. Yeah, the last night actually, my keel head broke away from the ram, so the keel was completely disconnected and just swinging.
Right.
And so I was just nursing the boat to the finish, trying to get there.
Yeah.
Well, what was great is we stayed in contact with all the other sailors during the race. So I'd be talking to Sam and Dee a lot across the Pacific Ocean and up the Atlantic. So you definitely form strong friendships while you're doing that, even though you're not in physical contact.
Right.
You're the only people really that understand what you're going through at that time, and you're also helping each other a lot.
But be honest, Brian. I mean, be honest. That must be terrifying. The boat's breaking up. You know, you're in the middle of nowhere. You're a long way from help. That must be terrifying.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I think I was 1,000 miles from Melbourne, which is to the north of me. So it's a long way to go to get any help. Would take quite a lot of time. So I was just focused on fixing the boat, and it was incredible the amount of people that would help. Obviously, the design team at 1K Yacht Design, and then the team boat builders, but also friends who were also boat builders would help around the world. So I was working 24 hours a day to fix this and calling people up, whether they're through the time zones. So in the UK, on the west coast of America, and then New Zealand. So if I was running into a problem, I could always call someone. Because very fortunately, there was just a very small 48-hour break in the weather when I could get this done without the boat moving around too much and the bow moving up and down. And yeah, I think it was quite serious and quite close to breaking the front off. So I'm glad that got repaired and I could finish the race.
And you know, the headline grabber was the winner, Michel Desroyers, and what an amazing performance, having to go back, restart the race, and then pick them off one by one, and leading the race, but getting dismasted, I believe, just into the Southern Ocean, was Loic Perron, and that sort of brings us on to where we're going to go next. But you know, what are those? What's your take on? Let's go Mich Des. Mich Des, the only man to win the Vendée Globe, the only sailor, I should say, to win the Vendée Globe twice. Give us a couple of words on Mich Des. That's an awful thing to ask, but
oh yeah, so I think he's won the Figaro 3 times. He comes second in the Mini Transat, Vendée Globe. A lot of Orma 60 sailing, and I was lucky enough to sail with him on Fado, the Mod 70, and yeah, technically he's amazing. He's a real innovator, always trying to make the boat go faster. So he's obviously a brilliant one design sailor, because you can't be to win the Figaro. Well, can't not be if you've won the Figaro 3 times, and he's constantly trying to come up with new ideas. So he's got a real engineer's brain on him, and pushes really hard. Very smart sailor, and he's known in France as Le Professeur, because he loves to impart his knowledge to new people coming into the sport, and he's very generous in that way. So he's an incredible ambassador for sailing, and now he obviously helped Francois Gabard to win his Vendée Globe in 2012, and I think that was, and yes, and he continues to help other people in other projects. So yeah, amazing sailor.
Yeah, and Loic, who was leading that race and has never won the Vendée Globe, but you went on not only to, that time you were racing against him, but next time you were going to race with him, and we're going to jump onto that. So that's the 2011 Rolex Fastnet race. where Bank Populaire 5 skippered by Loic with you on board, a new record, 32 hours, 48 minutes at an average speed of 18.5 knots. So we're going to pick up some video action from that. And there is no music with this, Brian, so feel free to do some commentary, and if you need me to stop the video, just ask. I'll pull that video in.
What a boat this is.
You had a bit of a run up.
140 feet long.
Yeah, you had a bit of a run up to the start, didn't you? Where did you actually start the Rolex Fast?
We started from Lorient on Saturday morning, I think, and then sailed up to off Poole, spent Saturday night, early morning off Poole, and then in the morning sailed slowly up the Solent to then join the boats that were coming from Cowes and Hamble and Portsmouth for the start, and just turned around at the 5-minute gun and headed out back down out the Needles. Amazing sail through the Needles, and then here's us at the finish, Loic driving, coming up to the breakwater. It looks all very calm in that video, but there was some rougher patches for sure. There's 14 of us.
And am I right in saying, Brian, that the vast majority of the fleet had not actually passed Plymouth on the way to the Rock when you finished? Is that right?
Yeah, we passed a lot of boats from the Lizard in towards Plymouth. Yes, and I think obviously some boats had got into the Irish Sea, but I think perhaps when we finished, no one had even got to the Rock yet. Wow. That's the speed of that machine. Really quite an incredible boat.
I'm just going to pull the video back so you got a nice. There, that's not a bad shot, is it? So.
Well, you can see that's beautiful conditions for us, but there was a gale coming.
Yes, there certainly wasn't there? And we had a major incident well after you had rounded the Rock. We had Rambler 100 capsize. Everybody saved, which was the wonderful thing. But quite a few lessons were learnt from that capsize in terms of, well, I'll let you say, what you heard about that capsize. What do you take from that in a safety aspect?
Yeah, it was very concerning when we heard about it on board. And what's amazing is how fast these accidents can happen. Keels falling off on a monohull or capsizes on a multi-hull. In the last Transpac race I did, OEX, one of the 70s that have done numerous Transpacs, the rudder fell off, boat filled up with water and sank so quickly. And this was an example where suddenly everyone was upside down. A few people clambered onto the top managed to clamber onto the top of the hull. Yeah. A lot were had to swim out. Some were trapped down below. It really was a great test of seamanship that everyone survived in that really, really cold water, and of the rescue services and boats that came out to pick people up. But the lessons learned, definitely have your EPIRBs to hand at all times, really. So we've really made sure our EPIRBs are in whatever clothing we have on, with foul weather pants, for instance. On the multi-hull, certainly you have a knife ready, because if you're suddenly upside down, you need to perhaps cut through the trampoline or cut someone else through the trampoline if you're on top. So that's important. And also just being upside down, everything is very hard to find. So you really need to be well drilled about where everything is, where your own kit is. So your EPIRB is on a rope that's attached to you, so it's not going to, if you're in the water, you're not going to lose it. There's a lot of good lessons from that. Obviously, registering your EPIRB is very important from that case. And I think the race organisers are much more aware of tracking all the boats now, I think, and seeing if one of them's stopped and finding out exactly why that is.
Yeah.
And also the scrutineering beforehand is very good. I think everyone's much more aware of safety now.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And yeah, so you sailed on Bank Pop 5. Obviously, you did some training for it, but that was the first race you did on Bank Pop 5, the Rolex Fastnet race. But there was a greater thing to come, wasn't there? And that was the Jules Verne record attempt, 29,000 miles around the world, with Loic as skipper. 45 days, 13 hours, 42 minutes and 53 seconds. So we're going to play a little video now, and the long and the short of it is this does come with a bit of commentary, so you can grab that cup of tea, Brian, if you like. Here we go.
Enjoy the ride.
Yeah, good job.
Let's go break a record.
Yes, come on.
It's very exciting to be back. So this is my 6th attempt to sail around the world non-stop. So I want this to be the fastest trip ever.
Ça c'est l'Australie, ça c'est le Cap Lewin, et nous venons de passer le Cap Lewin. Donc Juan en 17 jours, 23 heures et 57 minutes, c'est pas mal. C'est pas mal.
Careful, just there.
Wow, that is just a most amazing bit of footage. Average speed over 26 knots. What was it like on board?
Oh, it was fast and furious. Oh, actually, our motto was fast but not furious. Just trying to keep the boat, just the hull not quite flying. Try to keep a sort of 95% speed the whole way. So downwind, you'd be doing 37 knots. That was just your average. The speed your target speed was about 37 knots. Down below, the motion could be pretty violent. And on deck in the south, you saw the snow there, incredibly cold at times. And we spent quite a few days, especially in the Pacific, very close to icebergs. We spent a couple of days where we rolled up the jib or the Jenica and just was going main only during the darker hours to be able to avoid icebergs. But we're still doing 25 knots at that time, slowed right down. Incredible team. Everyone had trained together for a couple of years. I was kind of a late joiner and the only Anglo-Saxon on the team, but it really was a privilege to sail with that team, that skipper, that boat. It really was the highlight of my sailing, really, especially the finish. As you saw, there was a lot of celebration at the finish, a lot of relief. It wasn't until you were about half a mile from the finish that you thought, okay, nothing can go wrong now. We can drift across this line and make it to the finish.
Yeah, but you did sort of, or rather, Loic and the team, you did go out to stalk Group Hammer's record, didn't you? You just to stay ahead of Group Hammer virtually on the track. Is that a fair description? Yeah,
that was the previous record was 48 days. Group Hammer 3. Yeah, they'd taken a couple of attempts to get the record. They'd capsized off New Zealand, and then they got the record the next time. Banque Populaire had tried 2 previous years for the record, and first year didn't have the weather to even leave. Second year, broke a daggerboard off Cape Town. I was on board for that too. So it was big build up to getting to it, and that was our target, to beat Group Hammer. And we were always watching where they were, and we were well ahead at New Zealand, probably 4 days ahead. But then we had a very bad ocean from New Zealand to Cape Horn and lost a lot of days. So we're only probably a day and a half ahead at Cape Horn. Right. And I noticed there on the commentary, Loic saying 17 days to Cape Lewin from Brest, 17 days to Australia from France. But I know we had a little chat earlier on. You say in modern times there's quite a big difference. Why is that, Brian? In terms of planning strategy. Yeah, well, now you can get forecasts that go out 14, 16 days. And, your target's to try to hook into a Southern Ocean low that will then propel you all the way past South Africa, past Australia, New Zealand, and all the way to Cape Horn. And that's kind of what IDEC did a couple of years ago. So you could possibly predict that from your beginning. I mean, we predicted we'd be at the latitude of Cape of Good Hope in 12 days, and I think we were within 10 minutes of that. Wow. Getting there, which was astonishingly accurate, quite fortunate. Mm-hmm. But that allowed us to be in the right place. Mm-hmm. And that got us as far as Cape Lewin, because that only took another 5 days to get to Cape Lewin across the Indian Ocean. But then things fell apart in the Pacific Ocean, and we probably lost 4 or 5 days there compared to our speed in the Indian Ocean. Mm-hmm. But then we had a really good South Atlantic coming back up, which is an area you really can't predict when you start. And then we had a pretty bad North Atlantic, because we had to sail almost to Boston from the equator before we could turn and head east towards the finish. In fact, we had to pass Fastnet Rock again on the way into the finish. We actually approached the finish line from about 70 degrees off course from the north. Wow. No, that's incredible. But I think
you know, we had a little chat earlier, and the navigator on board was Juan Villa, and Marcel van Triest was weather routing. The Jules Verne attempt allows you to have weather routing. Tell me, how important were those two in achieving the Jules Verne record?
Oh yeah, I think we wouldn't have had a chance without those two working so well together. I mean, they'd be working. We left early December, and I think from mid-October we were looking at the weather window to go. And in fact, I think 4 times we went to Lorient or Brest to get ready to leave, and then turned around and went home again, until eventually the right weather window came up. But Juan's extremely hardworking, very, very good with all the software on board, and he'd be working the routing, but in very close coordination with Marcel, who was probably, he could have been the hardest working person on the boat, because he would be constantly getting data from all over the world, even reconfiguring satellites to go ahead and look for icebergs on our track, because we had a lot of icebergs in the Pacific Ocean. And he was part of our team on the podium in Brest when we finished, and that's very well deserved indeed. He was probably glad it was done, so he could finally get some sleep.
And I'm getting a touch xenophobic here, but you've experienced the French public welcoming back their heroes, the adventurers. What is that like when you get back to France and go up on that stage?
Oh, you could not get through the crowd on a sort of rainy January or late January morning in Brest. You know, the place was absolutely heaving with people. People had driven from all over the country to welcome us in. It really is incredible atmosphere where the butcher, baker, candlestick maker are all enthused by sailing and want to see the people that they've been following for 45 days. And it's an incredible welcome, and I think that's going to be very interesting for the Fastnet next year, finishing in Cherbourg. I think people will see the amount of interest that the public will be giving all the boats coming in.
Yeah. So, Brian, we're going to fast forward again. I mean, I'm missing out 2 Volvo Ocean races, and I don't know how many different records, but we're going to keep this a multi-hull special. We're going to be speaking to some monohull exponents in the future, just so you know. But we're keeping this quite multi-hull, and I'm calling it the Mod 70 years. And the bit that really stands out for me was in the early days with Lloyd Thornburg's Fado. Records in the Rourke Transatlantic Race, Rourke Caribbean 600, Rolex Middle. I could go on. Let's just show a little bit of. This is the start of the Rourke Transatlantic Race 2015, and there's no commentary, Brian. So you feel free to go ahead. Fado, Rourke Transatlantic Race 2015.
Oh yeah, this will be the start in Marina Lanzarote, and then jibing into Puerto Calero. Jenica and Chip, there we are. It gets a bit lighter there, but we're soon off and going fast across down towards Gran Canaria, and then here we are in mid-Atlantic.
Who's that?
That's Henry Bombi.
Having a bit of a dance.
He's warming up. He's keeping his legs fit for that. That's doing probably 30 knots there. 30 knot karate kick. That's Sam Goodchild there driving.
Yeah.
27. That would be like a low speed downwind.
Wow.
You're often trying to do 30 knots. That was your target speed downwind.
Wow.
That's say 135 to 142 true wind angle. Very good VMG. That's me.
Okay. Can see some land in the back.
And here we are, just coming into Grenada. I think the wind suddenly died, and we've gone now to full sail, beating up to the finish in St George's. And great crew of 6, and we had a super race against Zeiss on that event. So yeah,
like the bomb.
We need to work on our timing there.
Yeah, that's marvelous, and you know, and so you know, Fado's adventures continued, and it was very much an international team which you co-skippered with Lloyd Thornburg. Was that a major change in role for you, Brian?
Yeah, it was quite different in that I was sort of the bridge between the French world and the Anglo world, because a lot of in fact, pretty much all the team hadn't sailed on big multi-hulls before. Some had sailed on the Extreme 40s, and some hadn't really been on multi-hulls except F-18s and things like that, and a lot of monohull sailing. So I was kind of the sailing master and coach as well, and that was really great to introduce, you know, fabulous sailors like Rob Greenhouse, his brother Pete Cummings, you know, Dave Sweet, to sailing those big multi-hulls, and they very, very quickly pick it up. Yeah, but just to go where the limits are to these boats, and also real up and coming sailors like the 2 you had saw in the video, Henry Bombi and Sam Goodchild. It's great to see how that experience has helped them in the future. Sam's gone on to race with Spindrift, which is the old Bank Populaire 5, and then with Soderbo, and then Henry's been on to do the Volvo. Yeah. So it's great to transfer knowledge over, but I seem to be in demand as that kind of bridge between the French world and the Anglo world, and especially on these Mod 70s, which are just amazing boats.
There's not many people like you, Brian. That's why you know you're a pretty rare commodity. There's not many that have done both. But anyway, going on, this is my favourite slide. Thank you very much, Richard and Rachel, for putting this one together. It's just Fado 3 hooning around. I'm going to put it on, and there's again no real sound, Brian. So feel free to tell me to stop, start, or whatever.
Yeah. Did you name this hooning?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that's the second leg of the Caribbean 600, reaching up to Barbuda, 33 to 35 knots. I think that's part of St Martin Regatta. Yeah, we're going past Fujin, which is a very fast boat.
Nice hat, Brian.
Thank you. It's a light air hat, that one.
I'm going to freeze it shortly.
Now, if you pause it, pause it right there.
Yeah.
And that shows the toughest job on the boat, which is trimming to leeward of the jib. The Jenica goes up to the high side, crosses over, but on the jib you have 40 knots of apparent wind speed. You can see that what it's doing to the hair there. Just constant spray in your eyes, and you've got to feel the balance of the boat, because you're constantly trying to sail it right on the edge of hull flying, or even hull flying itself. But you have a lot of control of the jib. You've got the sheet, which you've got to be ready to ease in emergency, and then you've got the in-out and up-down control of the clew position. So you can be powering up and depowering the jib, but you're really a little bit flying in the dark there. But you want to try to balance the main and the jib so that they're similar twist profiles to keep the helm in balance. And you're trying to do that through your psychic powers to leeward. We've tried comms, but they don't seem to work that well in that amount of wind. So you need very good hand signals between, especially the driver and the trimmer. Yeah, I'll carry on.
Fantastic.
I think
Yeah,
that's more-
just tell me to stop it if you want to. Look at that.
Yeah, that's more leeward trimmering on the other side. It's Fletch there, boat captain. Just overtaking some super yacht very quickly. Yeah, more. That's I think that's Pete.
Look at that bow wave coming off it. I mean, you're digging the hull in there a bit down to. That's
Yes,
sort of
yeah.
to
You
leeward,
can't
isn't
see the oil; it's fully down, but you've got a good view of the cockpit there. You can see jib trimmer to leeward. You've got a pedestal right in front of you in the middle of the shot, and to the right will be two people hanging on for dear life on the pedestals, because the motion is. There's no way you could stand up without holding onto something, preferably with two hands, because you don't know whether you're going to go forward, back, up, down, left, or right at any combination of those vectors at any moment. So you either got to be holding onto something, or on the longer races, you can, if you've got a brake, you can sit in that pod in the middle there, but bracing yourself on either side so you don't fall down the hatch in the middle. And in the pod, you can see some instruments, a couple of windows to be able to look out, and then you can see the end of the hydraulic rams, and each of them control one of the spectra strops that hold up the rig. So you can cant the rig 8 degrees to port or starboard, and that definitely improves gets the weight to windward and makes it aerodynamically efficient.
And how do you rotate it? Is that hydraulic as well? Rotate the rig?
No, that's actually a rope to each side, sort of about 4-to-1 purchase to either side. And then so the trimmers have got to do not only the headsail that they're working on, but also the mast rotation, the foil, up, down, back, forward, the daggerboard, up, down, and then all the halyards and tack lines. So it's a busy old job being a trimmer pitman.
Right, I'm gonna. I mean, being able to stop it like this, but it's just fantastic. Hooning, Fado 3.
Oh yeah, that's well over 30 knots, I'm sure. Yeah, you can see the leeward shroud, tiny bit loose there. You can do that up hydraulically to have a little tension. There's everyone wearing goggles. Just otherwise, your eyes are just so bloodshot at the end of the day, and you can't physically look at what you're doing as well. Yeah, here's us flying a hull, thinking Antigua, going so fast we've blown some of the vinyl off the hull.
And we can see quite clearly there the curved daggerboard. I mean, this is not the latest generation Mod 70 mod, but just tell us a little bit about how that daggerboard works, Brian.
Yeah, so you've got on the main hull you've got the daggerboard, the orange one in the middle. That currently is in the up position. It can move up and down 3 meters. And then on each float, there's a C foil. So it's just gently curved foil so that the more down it is, the more horizontal the tip is, and the more lift you get. And you can also move it fore and aft. So in anything over about 17 to 20 knots of boat speed, you'd want the leeward one down. And upwind, it tends to be forward. Reaching, it tends to be in the middle position, and the downwind heavier, you'd rake it all the way back to give you the most lift on the bow. See there, it's probably quite far back there, lifting the bow. But lately, people are trying to get more lift out of that foil. So Power Play have added a tip to that standard foil, which has made quite a big difference. And on Argo and Beau Geste, we're playing with a more aggressively shaped J-foil. Okay. And in combination with T-foil rudders on the floats. But that's the work in progress. Hopefully that's for the next year. And then Maserati, for quite a few years, have got, a really all singing, dancing foiling system where they have very flat L foils on the hulls, T foils on the float rudders, and then also a foil on the central daggerboard. So that's rather like rather like the old team.
That's fantastic to hear that development. We'll I think we need a little bit. We need a whole hour just to do that, Brian. Let's we've got 20 seconds left this video. I could play this for hours.
Yeah.
Oh.
This is what we need in our lockdown, isn't it?
What, a mod 70?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. And brings
everyone
back
needs a mod 70.
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much, Richard and Rachel, for that video. Back to you, Brian, here. So, I mean...
Thank you, Richard and Rachel.
Over the past 2 years, Fado has now gone down to the Southern Hemisphere. But over the past 2 years, you've been developing a new Mod 70, Jason Carroll's Argo. But your first Caribbean 600 and Argo made the headlines, but not for the right reasons, just before the start. So let's play a bit of video. And again, this one doesn't have a lot of audio on it, Brian, so feel free to tell us what's going on here.
Well, hello, Chad. I can see you've been you're watching there, and I've got a tea with me. I'm sorry this video has come up, Chad. This was
I mean, we can laugh now, but
but
I mean, a capsize on a 6-ton, 70-foot trimaran. Just tell us what happened, Brian.
This after so many miles of multi-hull sailing, I did not want to ever capsize, but I guess it was finally going to happen. And this was doing a race around Antigua called the Antigua 360. So we were racing with Maserati, and we were just in the lead, and we were hit by a squall with a unusual sail combination that we just needed to get through a little transition, and the bow just buried enough that then probably the foil was working the wrong way, and we tipped over very, very rapidly, very unexpectedly. But once that happens, we're easing everything. There's not a lot you can do. It's a matter of making sure you don't get in those positions, and unfortunately we did in that case. But what was miraculous is that we came back from this. We did this on the Friday. The Caribbean 600 was starting on the Monday, and numerous big multi-hulls have capsized, but never has one capsized and not broken the rig in 2 or 3, or in 1, 2 or 3 places. Yeah. So unbelievably, we capsized relatively flat water in the lee of the north side of the west side of the island, and we capsized in only about 15 meters of water. So the mast buried itself into the sand. Wow. So we were sitting at about a 45-degree angle, and
Brian, I'm just going to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
yes, carry on.
Just one thing. In fact, the guy who put this video together, which is Roddy Grimes Graham, has just pointed out Maurice Belgrave actually took this little bit of video with his iPhone. Thank you, Maurice. Wonderful guy. And didn't the whole yachting community in Antigua helped you get this boat back together? I'm going to let the video run now, but it was an amazing effort by all the people in Antigua to get the boat back together. Let's see some of it.
Yes, there was Maurice and his divers did an incredible job, and then Shannon and Carlo Falcone with their boat. That's what pulled us back upright after 5 hours upside down. Here we are taking the rig out. This would have been Saturday, race still starting on Sunday, and that's the top of the rig.
Yeah.
Had buried in this about a half a meter into the sand for 5 hours, just banging up and down. Amazing. There was so little damage to the mast tube, and it was only really the airbag that was on the head of the rig, which, when the boat came upright in that previous clip, had banged into and make some damage. So we had to
incredible
fly some boat builders in to do the repairs on Saturday and Sunday to the rig. And of course we had all the battens were broken in the mainsail were damaged, all the electronics were shot, the engine had been underwater. Because a lot of water got in the capsize and then sloshed through the boat. So there's a tremendous amount of work to do in 2 days, and the other teams, got to say, not only the people I mentioned in Antigua, but also the other yacht crews from the mini maxis that were there, lending us their electronics, and Giovanni on Maserati offering to help, and also he offered to delay the start for a couple of hours on Monday, so we could be ready. It was really fabulous to see everyone helping us, and probably few could imagine we would have made it, including us, until really Monday morning. We thought, oh, we could do this. So it was incredible achievement.
Well, I'll just run this through, and then we've got a little bit of racing footage from on board Argo, and as you said, close run thing with Maserati in the race, but
divers Maurice, we had to go down and flip over the hydraulics, flip over the hydro tank. Some of the guys did that, and we had to grind underwater upside down for 10 minutes to put some tension back in the rig.
Yeah, just excited to get back in the race, get the boat fixed, and keep everyone excited about the 600 and the boats going around.
So I think we're here racing now in the 600 with Francois Gabard, an amazing French sailor to be lucky enough to sail with, and we were ready to start, and we were determined to finish. We probably weren't in the perfect world to start because we didn't have our electronics calibrated. And we were a little bit gun shy of pushing the boat so hard, especially after just capsizing. So we were just working our way in. Really, our first sail was just getting out to the start line. We just made the start line, and then we were off on the race. And I think it was remarkable. The whole experience was incredible, and it was remarkable, our result. And it's great. Yeah. We were only 7 minutes behind Maserati.
Incredible.
And so I think we're all winners in that event.
Yeah,
so.
Incredible. There's some sort of unseen interview with you after this little
really?
clip. You might have had a rum or two when you did it though, Brian. I warned you.
I haven't seen this. Interesting.
As you say, just 7 minutes behind Maserati. Great race.
Oh, yes. That's Chad. Hello, Chad.
We never try to find excuses not to do something. We always try to find a way to achieve something. And I guess you've got to be practical and positive and fairly unflappable, because the force is much greater than you, and you've got to work around them. Not expect your will to always be fulfilled, your wishes to be fulfilled. So we get very good at weathering the storms, and we had a big storm when we capsized, but it didn't knock anyone down. No one got despondent and like, okay, well, how are we going to get to our target of doing the Caribbean 600? What do we need to do to get there and to do it safely? And it did seem to everyone probably a bit of an impossible task, but why not try it? Why not give it a go? Because who knows, you could pull it off, and we did. It's very satisfying when you've planned something, executed it, and it's successful. Then it's all in a sort of linear flow. But this is more spontaneous and unpredictable. So ultimately more exciting. and incredibly satisfying, and very bonding as a team. To say, we went through a capsize together, we went through 48 hours of working non-stop to fix it, and then we went through a race, and no crosswords. So it's a hell of a team on board, and you probably wouldn't get that if everything went perfectly to plan, because you have to get those difficult times to be able to pull together and have that sort of human side of it.
Well, Brian, that's amazing words. You had a couple of you might have just had a carib or two when you said them, but that really encapsulated. I don't want to repeat that, but to me that says an awful lot about Brian Thompson, actually.
Yeah, I'm not sure there was any carriage by that stage, Louis. I think that's sheer tiredness of not only doing that race, because as anyone who's done it, or that length race knows, it's you get very little sleep, and then the build up of the capsize, and then 2 days intense work. Yeah, everyone was absolutely spent at the end of that. But I hadn't seen that interview, so thanks for bringing that up.
and you were back with Argo this year in February 2020, which seems like a million years ago now. I'll actually pull I'll put the music on mute and just tell us about the latest trend in Mod 70 design. I mean, here's Argo.
Yes, yeah. As I said before, Mod 70 best offshore multi-hull ever
I should have held it
designed. I think ever built. Such a strong boat, can just sail thousands of miles with no problems at all. Just wash it down and then it's ready to go. The only limit is what the human body can take, really. You just got to be wary of it in over 15, 17 knots of wind. You've really got to be aware that the boat can capsize on you, and you have to be very careful sailing it. But those foils, which you can see left and right, super great at keeping the floats from burying.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike a normal boat, you've also got a dagger board, which you can lift up and down. Makes an amazing difference to the power of the boat. Lifting the dagger board is like putting a reef in the main.
Right.
Makes an amazing difference. So you've got a lot of things to play with the mast rotation, the foils, the dagger board, which makes it absolutely fascinating, and then very rewarding. Just to be doing those kind of speeds in especially moderate air. And the Caribbean is really a perfect place for sailing those boats. Ideal, because the wind speed is 17 to 20 knots, which is when the boats really take off. You're fully powered up with the J1 or J2 and full main, one reef, and it's really the sweet spot for those boats. You're not completely overpowered, but you're going top speed. So you can be doing 20 knots upwind and 30 knots downwind, and mid-lower 30s reaching. And interestingly, against a boat like Comanche, 100-foot monohull, by far the fastest monohull in the world, and we've raced it in St. Bart's, and actually upwind is where we have the biggest advantage over them, because they're doing 13 upwind, we're doing 20, and downwind, we've only got a 5-knot advantage. They're doing 25, and we're doing 30. So counterintuitively, upwind is actually where we're the fastest.
There you go. Yeah, that's surprises me. The video then goes on to power play. And just about pick out. I don't know how good the resolution is on this, but I can see very much a curved foil on power play. Just tell us the difference between what Argo's done so far and what power play have done.
Yeah, so we've got a standard C foil at the moment, standard mod foil, and they have adapted their standard foil to put a tip on the end, rather like when you see a plane taxiing along, you'll see the tip at the end of most of the wings. That really stops the flow disappearing off the end of the foil, and makes it a lot more efficient. So I think they're finding that uptick made a surprising difference to the amount of lift you could get off a similar length of foil. So they were probably in the 600, they were faster in when we were quicker, when it was quicker conditions, say over 20 knots of boat speed, and we perhaps were a little bit faster in light because there's slightly more drag to it. Yeah. So that's a trade-off.
And it was a cracking race. I heard the lead changed hands at least 7 times. Maserati, even with the T-foils, was getting in there and very cleverly, sailing some very good strategic moves.
Yeah, it was an amazing race. There was Maserati, and in the background for a second there, you saw Ultima Motion, an 80-foot try. So there were 4 big tries in that race. Really perfect. I hope that we'll get more and more for the Caribbean 600. But us and Power Play were locked together the whole event, really. We hardly ever lost sight of them. For the first third, we were probably in the lead. And then for the second 2/3, they probably were ahead of us for most of the event, but really it was nothing in it. It was match racing. No one had any equipment issues. We were just pushing really hard. Both boats had fantastic crews. It was an amazing race, and it was really down to the wind shifts of the last beat. I mean, they had my very good friend Loic Peyron on board on Power Play, and we had the amazing Frank Camas on our boat as well. So, so it was no lack of talent on either boat. Well, so wonderful race, and as you say, Maserati on many of the corners were up ahead of us. At Guadeloupe, they were ahead of us both. They caught us up by going way inside from the north of Guadeloupe all the way down to the bottom end, and there was not much in it at the finish. I think 4 minutes between us and Power Play. So
it was one tap,
time for a rematch.
You got to have a rematch. You come second twice. Come on. I mean, Jason. I think what did he say? I got to take another bite of the apple, I think was the New Yorker. The New Yorker said so. Hopefully we will be seeing Argo, Power Play, Maserati, maybe even Beaugest at the next Rourke Caribbean 600. But we've actually run over, Brian. We've been going about 10 minutes longer than we should have done. How about that? So thank you so much for coming on and being so candid and telling us about your amazing career, which is still ongoing. Last but not least, what's on the horizon for Brian Thompson? What's over the horizon for Brian Thompson?
Well, I'm really looking to more Mod 70 sailing when we can finally get back out on the water with Argo and with Beaugest down in Australasia, and perhaps with a new Mod 70 that's just arrived in the UK. So it's going to be a fun year, and who knows? Maybe one day, get to do some more sailing around the world. I could do one more around the world record, I'm sure.
I reckon with that big grin on your face, I think that would be wonderful, Brian. I hope all your dreams come true. Thank you to everybody watching at home. I can definitely say at home. This was the first edition of Time Over Distance. And if you want to make any comments or maybe suggest somebody to come on board, then you can email the Rourke, and the email address you should use is racing@rourke.org. And you can see a review of this video. This will go out on Facebook and also on the Royal Ocean Racing Club's website, which is rourke.org. We plan to be back with you same time next Friday, and I can tell you it's going to be a keelboat sailor, and one that sells a lot smaller ones than Brian has done. But thanks very much for being with us. Tell your friends and stay safe out there. Last word from Brian.
Thank you, Louis. Thanks, Rourke. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Hello to you all, and stay safe, and see you on the other side.